Dbms Important Questions Part 1. Question number 6. Explain about different types of data models. Or question can be asked like, what are the different types of databases in DBMS? If the question is asked like this, first we need to list out all the different types of databases or data models. The first one is centralized database. Next, distributed database, relational database, NoSQL database, cloud database, object-oriented database, hierarchical database, network database, personal database, operational database, and enterprise database. So let's try to understand each of these databases in detail. So centralized database is nothing but the database that is located and stores the data and which is maintained in a single location. So the users do access this information or the data through a computer network by following an authentication process. So through proper user ID and password, they will be getting into the centralized database through the computer network. Now coming to the advantages. So as we know, this centralized database is dumping the complete data in one single location. Obviously, the risk of data management would be reduced. Whereas coming to the data consistency, this can also be maintained in a better way in centralized database and moreover better data quality. Why? Because all operations are happening in one single location. Whereas coming to the disadvantages, the size would be larger because of dumping of huge data in one single location. And moreover, if in case any server failure occurs, this may lead to data inconsistency. Next is distributed database. So name itself says, so here I am not dumping the data in one single location, but I am distributing the data into the different allocations. So that's what it said. Data is distributed among different database systems of an organization. So it is mainly of two types. First one is homogeneous database. The second one is heterogeneous database. So both these category come into the distributed data type database. So if the execution happens on the same operating system, then it is called homogeneous database. And if the execution happens in a different operating system, then it becomes a heterogeneous type of database. So in short, let me say distributed database is a database that consists of two or more files or multiple files located in the different sites. So next one is relational database. So relational database, this is nothing but maintaining your data in the form of tables. And most commonly method of storing the data nowadays is in the form of tables. So that's what it says, stores data in the form of rows and columns, where rows are called tuples and columns are called attributes, as we know. Tools like SQL are used for storing, manipulating, and maintaining the data with respect to the relational database. That means the data in the form of tables. The best examples I can give for relational database is MySQL, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, etc. Next one is NoSQL kind of database. NoSQL kind of database is quite opposite to the relational kind of database. That means here I'm not going to follow the tabular approach. That means the approach is non-tabular kind. So I'm not using rows and columns, but in turn the data is stored by key value, or it can be stored in the form of document oriented, or it's stored in the form of graph or wide columns in the large columns. So this is how the data is handled in NoSQL kind of database. So next one is during high user loads, they provide flexible schemas and scale easily with large amount of data. So in short, I can say NoSQL data is something that is very useful in handling large size of data. Next one is cloud database. Cloud database is a database that is built and accessed in the cloud environment. So it is using, or I can say it typically runs on a cloud computing platform and access the data just like a service. So accessing the data is provided in the form of service that is in the cloud database. So the examples are Amazon Web Services, Azure, Google Cloud SQL, Cometera, SAS. So all these pronoun tools that we are using nowadays comes into the category of the cloud database. Next one is object-oriented database. Here, an object database or object-oriented database is a database management system in which the information is represented in the form of objects as used in the object-oriented program. So programming, you might have seen OOPS concept. So it is very similar to the OOPS concept in handling the database. So next one, here the data is represented in the form of objects like how I have said just now. So next one is in object-oriented programming, everything is an object and many objects are quite complex and have different properties and methods to retrieve the data. So next one is hierarchical database. So here the data is stored in the form of nodes. So these nodes are connected to parent and child. So in fact, in turn, I can say that there are hierarchical database deals with the parent-child relations. Whereas coming to the network database, it is quite similar to hierarchical database, but it do not deal with any parent-child relation. In turn, any number of nodes can be linked up with any set of nodes, forming a graph-like structure. So that's what it says. Data is connected in the form of nodes. It follows network data model and it forms generalized graph structure followed by the personal database. So what is meant by personal database? It's very simple. It's nothing but collecting and storing the data on user's system. So I'm maintaining a database in my own PC. Then that can be one of the examples of the personal database. So I'm not undergoing any complex queries like thing to handle my data. So it is because it is quite simple and easy kind of data that I am handling because my own personal thing. Next one, it requires very less storage. So in turn, personal database is something which is maintained by me for my own needs. So next one is operational database. Operational database creates and updates the data in the real time. That means it handles the operations like adding the data, removing and modifying the data then and there itself, and it executes and handles the daily operations. That means all the operations are happen on finalized on daily basis, and it also looks into the transactions or manages the transactions that happen each day. So the operational database, the best example I can give can be your supermarkets. So they maintain their own operational database where they update the data regularly with respect to the products sold or products that has been bought, daily profits and amounts, etc. So next one is the enterprise database. So enterprise database is database that is maintained for wholesomely for an enterprise. So it has to handle huge amount of data, or I can say it may have to manage massive amount of data. So this has to be taken care in a high efficient manner and it should be given access for multi-users. So more than one user should be allowed to access the data in case of an enterprise because it's a large sector and data becomes very dynamic in this case and Parallel execution has to be encouraged in this case to handle the data efficiently. So if the question is about different types of databases or data models, you may have to list out all these data types or data models and write the key points of each type of the database in short. Thank you very much.